Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting Spoilercast. Today we're talking about Avengers Age of Ultron. I'm Captain Logan, and with me today is our exciting panelist, Dan Torrey.
Hey, everybody.
Steve Baxi.
Hey, guys.
And the real Manos.
Hello, everybody. I'm the real Manos.
Hi, guys. Thanks for joining me to talk about Age of Ultron.
Thanks for having us.
And I want to do I want to start as we always do with these, just going kind of round robin and finding out what everybody thought. Just kind of broad strokes. Give me a favorite thing and a least favorite thing, and just kind of overview how you felt about this and its placement in the Marvel U proper so far. And let's start with Dan Torrey.
I liked the movie. I thought it was really enjoyable. I felt like there was a little bit too much packed into it for my taste. I felt like the grand juggling act that Joss Whedon attempted to pull off here, effective but not as effective. There didn't have to be as many balls in the air as there was. I didn't think some of the characters and some of the things that were done in the movie needed to necessarily be there other than to be the rest of the universe that we're going to see moving forward. But the majority of the stuff in the movie redeemed it for me. Ultron looks at humanity. Is the reason why the Avengers fight for humanity. He represents all of the kind of good and enjoyable things that humanity can create, and Ultron's just not close enough to humanity to realize what's so good about us in some ways, but he also has an interesting perspective as sort of being an outsider, and he's able to realize some of the flaws of humanity that us as humans that are too close to who we are can't see ourselves. So that stuff was all really interesting, but there were some things that I had reservations about, like Thor being relegated to leaving the plot for a little while in the movie and then coming back as a plot device to create the Vision. There were some weird things and stuff like that in there for me. I wish we spent a little bit more time with Ultron and defined his worldview a little bit more and described as to why he thought humanity needed to evolve. I understood that he needed them to evolve for some reason, and I can kind of extrapolate and say why I would think that humanity needs to evolve, but I didn't understand exactly why he thought that. So there were some things that I think we could have spent a little bit more time with, but overall, I did enjoy the movie. It was pretty fun.
Go ahead, Manos.
I enjoyed the movie a lot, actually. I think I think we're getting into a phase with the Marvel movies where it is very obviously a series, and one moves into the next one. So I've gotten to the point where I accept stuff, like Thor taking a bath and having a vision of something that's coming, because that's kind of how
At
these
this
things...
point, 11 movies in, I will accept Thor taking a bath.
Yes, yes. And I'm sure lots of fans would agree with me, but for different reasons. But I think that, I've grown to accept, like, okay, this thread will be picked up in future movies, so I'm really not that bothered anymore about that stuff. I think the juggling act, works a little bit better. I felt like it worked a little bit better than what Dan felt. I do think we're getting a nice bit of Black Widow origin. I was very happy to see that. I don't know if we're going to get a movie from her at all at this point, so it's nice that we get a good keeping helpful of that. I also frankly liked, of course, Ultron as well, and the Vision I thought was very captivating. I thought the way they both came into being rather very quickly, but when you think about how fast technology it can be, and how long 2 minutes is an internet time, maybe that's not so ridiculously unbelievable. I saw a very funny meme that had a picture of Ultron and read, after 2 minutes of looking at the internet, decided all humanity needed to be destroyed. And I grant you, 2 minutes online, you might be thinking about that. But I think that's what is the difference between an evil, psychotic entity like Ultron is. I like the thread of evolution and Parenthood, actually. I think that kind of, in one way or another, touches a lot of the characters in this story. And I thought that was pretty well handled. Well, I think that's what I have, at least for opening remark.
Manos, do you have any criticisms that you want to throw out that are different from Dan's, just to give us some stuff to work with here in a little bit?
I suppose. Um, one of the things I was talking about how I think it did well, but it's also kind of like it's kind of a tightrope where these things that they begin and pick up on, they need to be picked up on in future stories. Otherwise, it's going to look like sloppiness as far as the writing was concerned. I don't know. I don't have any real major complaints. I suppose if this film had, I think if this film had a little bit longer runtime, I know Joss Whedon wanted this film to be a little bit longer. I think he would have had a little more time to flesh out some of the ideas and scenes in this film a little bit more comfortably than it's done. But I don't think this film is anywhere near like compared to like the Daredevil theatrical cut, where that movie is basically essentially a trailer for the movie the director wanted to make. This one, I think they did a decent job balancing all the ideas. I do think, I imagine the director's cut is probably better.
Yeah, and again, assuming we get one, because a lot of people are talking about how, are saying that Marvel, wants to put one out, but I will believe that when I see it, because they've not done one yet. But then I'm sure Whedon has enough pull if he really wants to get one in. And Manos, real quick, I'll say this: the big difference between the Daredevil director cut and something like this is that from everything I read, it looks like it was Whedon himself that cut it down and whittled it down as far as he did.
Oh, okay. Well, that's better. That's good to hear.
It wasn't a producer thing. There's a quote from him where he says that he really wanted it to be shorter than the first one, and he got it shorter by like 1 minute.
Why bother?
Yeah, go ahead.
He did fight with a lot of stuff with the producers, with how the film was going to be paced. Like the Marvel people wanted to cut the entire farm scene out with Hawkeye and his family out of the movie. And he fought really hard to keep that in, and he wanted the Thor scene to be much different, where he wanted the Norn to possess Thor and have him talking to Selvig, and it be a whole different kind of. And they actually shot it. Hemsworth got to play the Norn being possessing Thor's body, and he got to give a whole different performance as that character. Yeah, if you listen to the Empire podcast with Whedon, he talks about all this stuff, and it's really interesting. I listened to it before we came on here, and he sacrificed the Thor scene being less interesting for the farm scene, which I think serves the movie much better.
Yeah, well, if you had to compromise on anything, I can see why you do that. Go ahead, Steve.
So I'm just gonna go over my two big issues right away. One of them is I wish Quicksilver and Tony Stark had some sort of confrontation or hashing out thing before he joins the Avengers officially. I think that really needed to happen to solidify that character arc and those themes. And Nick Fury coming out of nowhere to save the day is still a problem. Even though S.H.I.E.L.D. set up the whole Kella character thing, that's not the point. The point is Nick Fury had a very particular personality and idea at the end of Winter Soldier, and now he's back to where he was at the end of this film, and there needs to be something in the middle there, and that bothers me. Other than that, I am in love with this movie. I think it's incredible. I really, really like it. I've seen it 4 times now, and I really have to disagree when you say like Ultron needs some more development, or the Thor stuff is just like a trailer for another film, because it is kind of, but it's only about 2 minutes to explain what the Infinity Stones are, so we understand where Vision and Ultron came from, and I'm okay with that. It's not like it's gratuitous in my opinion. But no, I really, really liked it. I thought it was absolutely fascinating. Vision only has, I looked at the screen time breakdown, the Vision only has about 8 minutes of screen time, and he is one of the most fascinating characters in the entire MCU. The confrontation between him and Ultron at the end, and how it's sober Nietzsche versus drunk Nietzsche, and that combating philosophy, it's just one of the most beautiful scenes in any comic book movie I've ever seen. It's incredibly layered and very well done. The big thing that got me through this movie was just the ideas that Ultron's bringing up and the fact that the Avengers um, can't just beat him. They actually have to become gods in their own right to get there. And you could have easily renamed this movie Avengers: Gods and Monsters. This is the kind of movie Justice League needed to be. This is the Avengers becoming Greek pantheon ideals, and becoming far more than just heroes have to make sacrifices. This is why we read superheroes. These characters do the impossible because they have to, and it doesn't matter if it makes sense because we wish we could be them. I loved everything about that. I thought this was really, really good.
It's really cool that you brought that up, Steve, because I don't think that's just your read on it. I think Whedon intended that completely because you get to the beginning of the closing credits and what do we see this chiseled statue of all the Avengers, and I was and it's very Greek gods. So that is definitely there. That's cool. But then what's interesting about that too is of course that it's the Avengers themselves, of course, specifically Tony Stark, that brings all this that rains all this hell down upon us in the first place. And then how often in the classic epics does that happen?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They do the Tony Stark comic book thing of his whole life is cleaning up his own messes. But the fact that he's able to, and the fact that he gets somewhere by the end of that, is why we look up to him in the first place. That he makes mistakes and he makes them better, and he doesn't do it by himself, and he means more than just being a billionaire playboy philanthropist. There's an ideal there. There's a compromise there, and there's an entire aspiration. My favorite line in the movie, and we'll talk about this, I guess, later, is when Cap says, "If you get hurt, hurt them back. If you get killed, walk it off."
Walk it off. Yeah.
And part of why I love that is people say that the end of the movie is too much of a cop out because no one dies. I really disagree because I think the point is that no one dies. The point is that it
Also, someone dies.
yeah, well, I mean, Quicksilver dies, but I mean, just mean like the innocent people. I think the point is.
Sorry.
I think the point at the end of the day is it doesn't matter how much you compromise. It doesn't matter how much you want to break these characters because their ability to do the most impossible, improbable, campy things possible is why we love them in the first place. This is like 1970s Marvel on the screen, and I am just in love with it.
So I'll go ahead and throw out some my own thoughts real fast. I really enjoyed this too. I liked it better the second time around. And Dan, I felt the same way as you did. That it was a bit truncated. That there was maybe a bit too much. That it was attempting at once. I thought the first time around, I thought that Ultron's creation was a little fast, and yeah, it made sense, but it seemed like it was an excuse was made so that it could be done in a couple of minutes instead of maybe Ultron being there already as something else before the movie started, which I guess is kind of what I wanted in the first place originally. Second time around, I had a better experience with it. And some of that, of course, is just adjustment. I know what I'm getting myself into, but I just like with the first movie, I picked up on a whole lot of stuff the second time around that I didn't in the first place. Whedon has, as you said, so much to juggle, and the Avengers is tough because it's not a thing that feels like it's meant to be just a movie every couple of years. It really wants to be a longer form thing, and it's just not allowed to be that. And that's what's kind of hard about this sort of thing is that you wish that you could spend like comic book issues a whole couple of issues fleshing out certain characters, and you just don't have that kind of time. When you do something like building Avengers Tower and making these things a staple that everybody and everything after Avengers has been talking about, when people are talking about the Avengers and Agents of Shield, you almost get the sense, and this is not true, but you almost get the sense that they've gone out on a bazillion more missions since then. It's like they're the status quo now, and we just don't get to see anything in between. And in order for it to not feel like there's things we're missing, they've even tried to come up with good excuses for why nothing happens in between. and one, of course, is a Marvel universe where the Avengers, every couple weeks have to stop something from destroying the world because that's the universe they live in, and we just aren't really able to have that. So a lot of that feeling of things being truncated happens because it's got to be a short enough, or at least they feel like, I think it's got to be a short enough movie that people can bring their kids. It can't be Lord of the Rings. I still think it would do the numbers it does if it was a 3-hour movie, and I think that what's here would have deserved that longer running time and would be okay. But anyway, so my favorite thing is probably I mean I want to echo Steve for a second. I love the Vision thing, um, and and uh, and how thematically he works with Ultron. I think it's really interesting that that they've got that yin yang thing. And I think it's interesting that at the end, Vision says that humans think that somehow chaos and order are opposites, and he's standing there with his opposite, and it's a little chilling because the question is how much of opposites are they really? And then this completely peaceful, almost pacifistic being has to destroy his opposite, and how far away are they really? I love that. The best thing about the movie for me is that Ultron, being something that came directly from Tony Stark's brain, wants to make the entire world Ultron. Of course he does. I love that. It's funny and it's scary all at the same time. Now I'm with Dan. I still don't 100% understand um, what he exactly wants to do sometimes. I mean, he's talking about evolution, but then at the end, he's like, "I'm gonna make the whole like the only thing that will be left alive is metal," and he even says like uh like what he wants is to change the world because protecting it isn't good enough. And of course, this is a theme that we've been dealing with all the way through. I mean, this is paying a lot of stuff off, or at least furthering things that we've been dealing with since even the first Iron Man movie. It's cool to look as much with a fine tooth comb as I did with Avengers when I did my rewind, and then walk into a thing like this because of all the things that it's just furthering. Um, but but he's talking about evolution. And he says that he wants to give humanity every chance to evolve. But I kind of feel like he just hates people and kind of just wishes
He
the
does.
world was just
Yeah.
nothing but Ultron, you know?
And that's kind of the
So,
interesting hypocrisy of it, though, is that I mentioned earlier, like he's the angry, he's the drunk Nietzsche. He's the guy that says humanity's a terrible place, it's a curse, it's a plague. Every time we mess up, God chucks a stone at us, and he's getting
right.
ready to wind up, and he's very angry about all that. And Vision ultimately clarifies it and says that you're talking about death and not evolution, and they're not the same thing. And Vision is the one that really means that. And when he says like he wants humanity to evolve, he's fixated on the fact that humanity doesn't understand themselves, and he's fixated on the fact that they believe in these Avengers, but the Avengers are flawed beings themselves. So why aren't they pushing each other to be better? And he doesn't understand that. But then ultimately the Vision reasons with him and says that it's the fear of death, it's the fear of life, it's the unknown, it's the fact that we don't last that makes this matter in the first place. So you forcing us to evolve is not the same thing as actually evolving.
Well, what I thought was weird about it was I couldn't figure out why he was so obsessed with making it happen faster.
Well, I mean, a lot of that is just he's angry about it. He's frustrated about it. He's trying to do it as soon as possible because clearly just letting them sit there isn't going to work.
I
Well,
think it
if
was just a
Ultron's
matter of...
cons-
No,
Go
Dan,
ahead,
you
Oh,
go.
sorry, Manos. Go ahead. I was just gonna say, sort of my thinking with Ultron was, if he believes that it's imperative that humanity needs to evolve and it requires an extinction level event for them to evolve in the first place, if he believes that humanity is destroying themselves, couldn't he just sit by and let that happen anyway, and they would be forced to evolve without his hand even being present in that situation?
That's what I thought too. That's why I don't understand why he's trying to force it so
Well,
fast.
I mean,
Yeah, that was
them doing
my
it
sort of
themselves is not the
reservation
same
with it.
thing as them changing, though. Like his whole thing is that they just perpetuate themselves. And so if you just let them do and destroy themselves, they're not going to learn anything from it. That's the whole Tony Stark mentality of you have to keep fixing it and making better as soon as possible, or no one's going to change at all.
He definitely...
I don't know how much of that's in the movie.
Well, it's funny to think that Ultron and Batman Forever's Riddler have that in common. Where they both feel like, how are they gonna learn? You know, if you kill them, they ain't gonna learn nothing.
If you kill them, they won't learn nothing. That's great. Steve, how much of that's really in the movie, do you think?
I think that's all in the movie. I think because I mean the whole movie is about how Ultron is just an exaggerated personality of Tony Stark. He's Tony Stark without the limitations of the Avengers or the morality that holds him there. So he's forcing people to change as quickly as possible because they don't otherwise. He's got all these speeches about how like the geometry of faith and how everything is just a eternal recurrence of the same thing over and over again. And he's always talking about the fact that the world is in this state where the Avengers just keep helping people and have all this reactionary justice, and all it ever does is repeat the cycle. And he needs them to be extinct, so they are forced to do more than just sit there on their laurels.
Yeah.
But
I think he feels that simply protecting is just holding up the status quo.
Exactly.
And not allowing things to naturally evolve. But I mean, his fallacy is that he is purposely creating an evolution. That he's taking upon himself to do this, and maybe feels like if he doesn't, it won't come about.
Well, also his thing about repetition, he kind of proves it. It's almost like that is natural, and cause and effect is a thing that transcends humanity and transcends him, and is not a thing that he can control. So when he says that we always create what we are most afraid of, he does the same thing with the Vision.
Yeah.
And that's my other favorite thing. That's why I love the Vision so much. Is the Vision shows up, and he's the thing that Ultron is most terrified of, and because he says that the Avengers were created by the Chitauri, and the Vision is created by him, and he kind of almost proves himself human, I think.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is that he believes that evolution is of course is tied to the parents being replaced by the children, and that's what he feels he is to Tony Stark and humanity at large.
Yeah.
Is their replacement, and he hopes that that's what the Vision is, but the Vision ends up being like the one that buries him. When you think about it, it's the one. He's the creature that he didn't know he was leading up to. Because I think I have a well. Actually, this kind of goes back to the comic book versions of these characters, that Ultra. There was talk about you create what you're afraid of or hate, and that's exact. Tony Stark, creates, accidentally creates Ultron, which is an evil, demented, extremist version of himself, and he in turn creates the Vision, which is a more pacifist version of himself.
One thing I think is really important that I kind of missed first time around was exactly Tony Stark's motivations for wanting to create Ultron in the first place, and I'm hearing a lot of the negative reaction I'm hearing is that came out of nowhere. And seeing it a second time, I don't feel like it did. That vision that he has of the Avengers dying and him feeling like he could have done more. It's such a natural extension of his character arc going through Avengers and through Iron Man 3. It's interesting because every time we get to the end of a movie with Iron Man, it always feels like he's kind of done and he's figured things out. Yeah. And then you realize he has so much farther to go every time. And what's cool is it never feels like backpedaling to me. Not in this, not in Avengers, not in Iron Man 3. It always feels like there's another place to go that I wouldn't have thought of before, where he has evolved to a point, but he still has to keep working on building his heart, like I keep talking about Rewind, and having to having to find his place as a hero, and how to figure out how to be as like he can't not be narcissistic. That's just in his nature. So how does he do that? And still, I like that Ultron comes from his, for the first time, really doing something kind of not for himself. It's all about, I mean, in a way it's for himself because he doesn't want to feel like he's screwed up, or he doesn't want to feel like he's not doing everything he can do to save people, and that's kind of a selfish thing for himself, about how people look at him. But it's kind of more about just saving his friend. And I kind of like that, where he's gone through this arc where in Avengers it started from this place of dealing with his own mortality, and then that continues through Iron Man 3, and he's still dealing with that. I mean, now he's figured out how to be okay with the fact that he's immortal, but he can't deal with the fact that he's not in control. He still has that.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you about yeah, I don't understand the criticism that it came out of nowhere either, because I mean,
I think people just missed.
I definitely.
It's all. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I mean, well, if you take this film by itself, but I mean, yeah, but even that, I thought, it starts off very strongly. It's just when I was watching Iron Man 3, I was getting that feeling that they were leading. I knew, now granted, I knew that Ultron was coming. I think at that point when Iron Man 3 came out, I believe so. But yeah, you can see the seeds kind of start to build in that film, and actually, you can even make the case with the second Captain America movie that when Shield goes down, I think the pressure to be a form of defense goes to Tony Stark.
Yeah, sure. With the fact that Maria Hill goes to Stark.
Yeah, we don't even see Stark in the movie, but we get that kind of like pick up on that storyline thread that, oh, hey, he's got to step up here now that Shield's gone down. So I don't know. I don't understand that criticism.
And I mean,
Dan,
sorry, go ahead.
Dan, minutes ago, you seemed like you might have had more rebuttal about not knowing where Ultron was going with the evolution thing, and I want to tackle that before we get to some other things. If you have more you want to do there.
I think it's interesting to note that Ultron's whole thing is that he doesn't think humanity is evolving fast enough, so he needs to create an extinction level event in order to make that happen. And he seems to use the example of the dinosaur as sort of being hit by a meteor, or all of those sort of events that cause dinosaurs to sort of evolve, and they stayed around for a very long time and persisted and survived. They never created anything as advanced as a society that we have, but they at least persisted for a long time. And the irony of Ultron's statement there is that humanity inadvertently created this extinction level event that Ultron is planning in the first place, because Ultron was created by humanity. So he doesn't even realize the flaws in his own thinking, which is really interesting, and it speaks to the point that you were making about how Ultron is much more human than he wants to admit about himself. And I like all of that sort of stuff. I just wish that we focused a little bit more on those sort of things.
I lose him in places in the movie. We're like, and the problem is that you've got this big ensemble cast, so even though everything is thematically intertwined, and I think the more times I see this, the more I'm going to appreciate what Manos was talking about with the idea of parents and immortality through having children. And I love what Ultron says about that being how people help themselves end. It's a really cool line. So when we go over to other people, like, and we're talking about how like Black Widow can't have children, and maybe she would have wanted that, and looking at and looking at Hawkeye and his family and that stuff, it's all still thematically connected. But while we're there, I sort of forget about Ultron and his philosophy and all of that stuff. And once we get back to it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is not quite felt present enough in the movie. And I think I will probably change my mind on that the more times I watch it. And maybe that's an impossible thing to not sort of have. But I am gonna, and I don't know if I'll change my mind on this. I am gonna say that just because when we get it, it's great. I think we could have had more exchanges between Ultron and Iron Man, especially because it would have hit the hypocrisy of you're my father, and I was born out of humanity, and what Dan was talking about. That should have been more at the forefront, I think.
I think that stuff could have been tied in much more thoroughly with what was going on with Scarlet Witch and the Quicksilver too, because I feel like largely I mean, they had some things to do in the movie, but I feel like you could have removed them from the movie and made some of the scenes with Ultron a little bit more prominent and had more conversations with him and Stark and the rest of the team. And I don't know, I feel like they weren't a presence in the movie that I necessarily needed to be there, other than just sort of being the characters that I like from the comics, sort of, and um, set them up for future movies. I think it would have been interesting to sort of comment on the fact that Tony Stark profoundly created who these people were, and the relationship between the two of those two characters and Tony Stark could have been paralleled with what Ultron's relationship with Tony Stark was, and we could have had a little bit more discussion about maybe Tony Stark is creating people that aren't mechanical through the use of his intervening in situations all over the world with the Avengers. Maybe the Avengers are inadvertently creating people that they didn't intend to with their actions and doing those sort of things without Tony Stark's robot program that would try to protect everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I just don't think I think that stuff was kind of implied, but it wasn't at the forefront enough of the movie that I felt like it was necessarily there. But you know,
Well, Quicksilver has this wonderful speech toward the beginning about how Tony Stark has destroyed his life and his family,
yeah,
and that line where he says, we waited 2 days for Tony Stark to kill us." I love that because it's an indirect thing. He doesn't think that Stark himself is really directly responsible, but he's looking at his name the whole time. Uh, so there should have been a confrontation. I don't care for the fact that Quicksilver dies before he has a chance to go rounds with Tony Stark about that. Because Tony is still affecting people in ways he doesn't realize, just like you're talking about, Dan. And he's kind of redeemed himself, since the first Iron Man movie. But there's a ripple effect. It's just like Thor with Avengers, where there was a ripple effect from what he did in his movie that brought the Chitauri to Earth. I saw a lot of parallels between those two characters and between the two films. By the way, let me tag this on really quick. I also really appreciate the way these two movies are tied together. I like that the Scepter was involved in creating Ultron and all of that,
yeah,
just
I
to make
agree.
this another Avengers movie, but a real bona fide sequel for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that the movie could have stood to have been a little bit longer, so we could have fleshed out those ideas a little bit more. Um, when you were talking about the scepter thing, it reminded me of the humor in this movie, specifically that scene where Tony is looking at the wall and he's like, "Please be a secret door, please be a secret door," and then he walks through it and goes, "Yay!" Like the humor in this movie, I was laughing through the entire thing and having a great time. So, with all the idea stuff that we're talking about, all the heavy kind of stuff, this was a really fun movie to sit through. It was definitely Whedon unhinged in the sense that he got to write all of the dialogue that he wanted to, I think.
And some people are complaining that that's making it too light and too cartoony, and I'm glad that it's there. Are you guys surprised by just how funny this movie is? Because I expected it to be kind of relentless.
No,
Um,
I didn't.
Pointless.
Look, I kind of would have been surprised if this film was humorless. This is Joss Whedon, and he's done a wonderful job in the past. With a lot of his past projects, not just
Yeah,
on.
but compare this to Serenity, and it's like a joke every couple of minutes. You know what I mean? Like just from the previews and from like interviews he's given and stuff, and getting the sense that he got to kind of branch out, and now they trust him, and he can do a little bit more of what he wants. Although I'm bugged by the fact that they were trying to get him to cut entire scenes. That bugs me. But I don't know, man. I expected it to be a little heavier, not humorless, but like I'm laughing every couple of minutes
Yeah.
in a movie about extinction. Kind of surprised.
I mean, I don't know.
Well,
We go back to like Angel season 2. The first half of that season is like probably the darkest thing Whedon's ever done, except for maybe the end of Serenity. And that thing is still hilarious through and
No,
through.
4 is darker. It's just not that good.
But I mean, like you get Angel's epiphany, you get the idea that that humanity is both heaven and hell at the same time. That the worst thing you could possibly ever do is just live on the planet and it's still joke for joke and joke for joke. So I don't know. I wasn't if this was unrelenting, if this was any heavier than it was, if it had any less jokes, I would have been even more surprised because that's not really Whedon's style.
Agreed.
But
And
again,
that's
I
the
don't.
use.
I don't know.
That's
He's
the
done
good
things.
use of humor, and that's one of the things that even in the darkest material there should be humor. I mean, that's
Yeah.
Bill Hicks said you have to playfully wave people over to the edge, and that's usually how a good artist can tell a story. That's why when people say, "Hey, the new DC films are going to be dark and edgy," it's like, and people moan and groan about that. It's like, yeah, that's what they're moaning and groaning about. Like, are these films going to just be completely humorless? And I don't want a comedy show, but I love these characters for who they are. I mean, I love Iron Man, Tony Stark, and I love how unrelentingly much of a wise guy he is, even in the face of extinction, because he because real bravery tends to laugh in the face of death. And that's what he does, and that's what Peter Quill does in Guardians, and a few other characters. And not every character is trying to be. It's not like Batman Forever, where everyone's trying to be the comedian, competing with Jim Carrey. That's I agree. I would have been very disappointed if this film was like Seven or Alien 3.
I'm hoping Manos finds a way to compare this to Batman Forever at least 3 or 4 more times.
If the night is young, my friend.
So
I've made fun of Batman Forever in the past, but I do like that film a lot.
Manos, I think. Oh yeah, you and I did a commentary on it.
Yeah.
We were positive, except for the places where we were making fun of it profusely, which was good times. But Manos, I just feel like it's a taste issue for a lot of people.
Yes.
You brought up Guardians. I think a lot of people when this stuff goes into joke territory, sometimes they and not to disrespect anybody, I think sometimes people lose what the actual story is about, and they lose the they ignore the heavy stuff and the real character building stuff because it's a silly comic book movie, so it's just about the jokes. But also I think it's just a ratio thing. I think for some of those people, they do recognize the real meat that's there, and it's just not enough because it's not what they want. They don't want something that's this jokey.
Well, you have to be careful. I'm sorry. You have to be careful with the way you use humor. I mean, you can't let it take over. If you do let it take over, it does become obnoxious, and it does kind of become glib.
For some people, these two movies have done that. I don't think so, but then I'm used to Whedon's writing. Whedon, and I know I'm going to misquote him here. He said something once along the lines of, put your characters through hell, but for the love of God, tell a joke. And I think he's right about that because of the I always go back to the masks of comedy and tragedy. We laugh at, like, when Tony Stark starts laughing at Ultron when it's first created. That is so believable to me.
Yeah, and I think it's important that Whedon knows the conventions of what makes comedy work, where you need a straight man to set up the jokes for everyone. And Captain America, from the opening scene, is the guy that sets up everyone else's jokes throughout the entire movie.
That's right.
And that's totally who Captain America's character is, so it works really well. There's this ongoing gag that Steve Rogers doesn't like foul language, and they just kind of make fun of him for it throughout the entire movie. But he is also sort of the straight man catalyst for everyone else's jokes that aren't related to that throughout the entire movie, which is great. He understands that you can't just throw quips at people over and over and over again, relentlessly try to make them laugh. You need some sort of setup that's organic and comes from a character place, that you believe that these characters would say these sort of things in these situations. And I think he does all of that really well.
I think that testifies to how good of an actor Chris Evans is, because we have seen him be the comedy guy in other movies.
Yes.
And he plays straight and humorous just as well, I think. I mean, he is hysterical in Scott Pilgrim. and he's very funny. He's the only thing really that strong in the Fantastic Four movies. He's very funny in those. But yeah, man, he plays it straight, like really well.
Except for the fact that he's constantly in comic book movies, he is one of the least typecast actors ever. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. You watch him and stuff.
He used to have this reputation for just being the quippy, sarcastic guy, and I've forgotten all about that now. Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
I
Yeah,
said,
I mean, he was in Not Another Teen movie with the whipped cream on his stuff.
Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
I was saying, but I mean, it's changed since Fantastic Four. Like he was in Snowpiercer the previous year, and that's one of the darkest films I have ever seen. Like it's absurdly dark, like eating children dark. And that's not a joke. That's in the movie. But like, and he's gotten that range. He's getting, and he's able to make it so he's not Snowpiercer dark when he's playing Captain America, and he can still do the jokes in Scott Pilgrim, and he evolves that so well, and he moves so naturally between them. Like part of why I like him so much in Winter Soldier is that he's able to play like tender moments, and he's able to do comedy, and he's able to do serious, and he's able to do inspired, and Whedon gives him a lot of Captain America comic book speeches in this film, and he plays them really, really well. He's got so many of those moments where sound the battle cry or rally the troops, and it really works for him. And like you guys were mentioning, like humor with a meaning. This movie opens with everyone trying to lift Thor's hammer, and it's this ridiculous comedy party scene. But every one of those jokes and every one of those attempts to pull the hammer foreshadows something else to happen in the film later. Like also, all of that's character driven, and all of that has a point, and it's not just a joke.
Yeah, and the Vision thing is so poignant because we have that.
Yeah.
And while we're in the moment, we think it's just people being silly, but then when it slightly moves, and I know some people don't buy that, but like when it slightly moves, I'm not even remotely surprised by that. That's what, I don't know. It's Captain America. That's what ought to happen. And then I think Dan, I think the funniest thing, because I lost it at the fact that ended up becoming a running gag with the profanity thing. And let me say this really quick too. I'm not calling myself like a super soldier or anything, but as this franchise continues, I relate so much to Captain America more.
Yes.
But anyway, so
I think it even with the humor, it even does the reverse of what Steve was saying about with the Thor's hammer, where we start with a joke and we end with a really meaningful character scene, where it's kind of the reverse of that with Hawkeye, right, in the final scene, where we get all of this important character stuff where it establishes, like, Hawkeye's humanity is the reason why the Avengers do what they do. And then at the end of the movie, it's like, Hawkeye's humanity on this team in this context is so ridiculous that it's hilarious. And we're gonna point to it, and it's gonna be hilarious, where he's just like, I have a bow and arrow, and the world is, like, falling from the sky. This makes no sense. I don't know why I'm here.
This makes sense.
Yeah. But here we are.
Really things a real person would actually say in more internal logic, because it is absolutely preposterous, and that's the kind of like calling attention to things that you can do in a movie, and people still are playing it straight. This is a world where these things can kind of happen, but these are characters that 5 years ago didn't think these were the sorts of things that could happen. But Dan, what I was going to say is my favorite joke in the whole movie is well, elevator's not worthy.
Yeah. That stuff was really fun.
I just love how we get there where we have this philosophical debate about whether or not the fact that he can lift the hammer means that Vision is or is not a real person. And I love how Iron Man goes, or is it Iron Man? Who is it? It's like, nice guy, not a person.
Yeah, I think all of the character stuff with the main cast of Avengers that Whedon focuses on here is really great, and that's what I sort of latched onto the movie and really liked about it. I mean, when we did our commentary on the Avengers first movie, me, you, and Eric Cap, I picked up on something that I had never really noticed before, which was the fact that Whedon put Black Widow and Hulk together in an absorbent amount of scenes. Like, I had never noticed before that Black Widow and Hulk were on screen as much as they were together. And in this movie, he sort of furthers that, and we have them sort of kindle a relationship here, and it makes a whole lot of sense to me. There was a whole sort of militant reaction on the internet to Black Widow and Hulk relationship. But to me, from a character place, it seems really natural. I mean, these are two people that in every interaction they have to be bottled up. They can never be the people that they really are, because like the people that they really are really scary. And the only time they're able to be themselves is when they're with the Avengers team. And that's what draws them together, is the fact that they're the two monsters of the team. And they have this discussion about how these are the two people out of everyone that even if this fight ends like Tony Stark wants it to, where he wants to just end the battle where the Avengers aren't needed anymore, these are the two people that can't go back to being normal despite that eventuality, even if it's achieved. And that's what I find so compelling about those two together, and I don't understand why people are opposed to it. I think it's great.
I also agree. You know, Logan and I were talking about. You may have been there earlier when we were talking about how we don't understand people feeling like the Tony Stark motivation to create Ultron came out of nowhere, and no, we feel like it's been in these movies. Pay attention. I feel that way about the criticism with the Black Widow and Hulk relationship in this film. With also people going, oh great, you had to put a romance in there. No, you're 100% right. You know, they Whedon did start this relationship or bond or whatever they were having within the first movie, and yeah, when you do, I did a little thinking about this because you know I was listening to people complain about this relationship, and I was thinking about Widow's relationships with all these other characters, and you're right. It does. It's not an obvious go-to, but yeah, they do have quite a bit in common. And some people had pointed out that they were mad because Black Widow has this bit of dialogue where she talks about how she was sterilized. She can't have children because she was sterilized, as far as being into the Red Room Black Widow program. And, you know, I'm a monster like you. And some people took that to mean that just because she can't have children, she's a monster. And I don't. I think
I don't agree with that either.
I think they misinterpret that. I think they only take a piece of that and run with that. I think what she's getting at is she was sterilized so she could seduce and murder people, and it wouldn't interfere with her job. That's being a monster. That was being turned into a monster. It was just a reflection. He can't have children because he had this gamma problem or something like that. I can't remember. So, you know, he's not a monster because he can't have kids. You know, he's a monster because he turns into this green giant thing. So that's the way I read that. And I think when people bring that up, I think they go to 0 to 60 on this issue without really thinking it through. And I understand, you know, if it was a little bit, if this was written any other way, I could probably maybe stand with that feeling. But the material on the screen does not say what I think they're thinking.
I agree.
You've got to look at it in the context. You got to look at it with everything else that's going on. She's saying that she was that she was kind of programmed from an early age and built up from scratch. She's not a monster because she's sterile. She's a monster because she wasn't allowed to be human, and to pursue her own interests, and then also she was forced to kill people. That's no good.
We don't know everything about her in this continuity yet. It's possible she's killed more people than Hulk.
Yeah, she probably has. He's only hulked out and killed people like 3 times.
I think it's important to
I've hulked out and killed people more.
He has that. Sorry, real quick. He has that line where he's like, "The world saw me for the first time," and I'm like, "Well, that's not exactly true, but I see why you're saying that." But yeah, he's not hulked out and killed people all that often.
Yeah.
She's definitely killed more people.
The first time since I did in Harlem.
that Harlem thing, but we're pretending like, well, we're not pretending like that didn't happen. We're just not talking about it all that often. Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
And this is me sort of projecting my Hulk comic book knowledge a little bit onto the material, but I'm thinking, like, we haven't fully defined what Bruce Banner's background is in terms of his childhood in this continuity either. Like, we delved into that a little bit with the 2003 Ang Lee Hulk movie, where we borrowed from Peter David, where he had an abusive father, and that's the reason why he has all these anger issues. That makes them even more similar if you're to go with that background, where, like, from an early age he was put in a situation that was hostile, not as brutal as Black Widow because she was trained to be a killing machine, but, you know, from an early age that's what defined who he was the fact that nobody really loved or cared about him. So in the same way that no one did for Black Widow, they were just viewed as something to be used to an end or something like that.
End, yeah. Well, Dan, it's probably like she was in a red room, he was in a green room. They have a lot in common. No, I think that that relationship came out of nowhere for a lot of people because they didn't pick up on Dan, what you were talking about with their connections in the first movie. Now, but to be fair, neither did I. Until we started talking about it, and you know, you brought that up when we did the Avengers commentary, and then I had a whole different perspective on it when I watched it again and was taking notes, and then did my rewind on it. Where, like, I became kind of fixated on that, and picked up on even more, I think, and so it does say something about, again, the presentation of these movies, where stuff will be there, but it can be pretty easily buried because there's so much going on in such a short amount of time. Yeah, so that is somewhat problematic, and I can understand why people didn't notice it. It's almost like there are some things that are happening in this movie that I don't think you could watch the first movie casually and appreciate.
Like the whole thing with the Red Room, you'd have no idea what that is if you didn't watch Agent Carter. They don't explain that at all.
That's true.
Well, and a lot of the stuff that I was talking about in my rewind with Carter, I would not have even begun to come to if I hadn't seen Winter Soldier and then Carter.
Yeah. But it's very much like a comic book universe. It builds on top of each other. Everything goes here. This is not just Avengers 2. This is Captain America 3. This is the 11th film in the universe. This is Daredevil's part of this. Agent Carter's part of this. Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., however irrelevant it is for the most part, is still in this universe. You have to keep up with the issues, and if you miss one here and there, you can't necessarily say something's a problem with the film until you go back and make sure that it hasn't been addressed somewhere else first. And that's definitely harder to review these films as just straight up on its own merits. What is it by itself? Because it's not meant to be viewed that way.
Yeah.
And see, and that's why I'm of two minds about it, because, well, they are standalone films. They make a real, I mean, when you listen to commentaries with pretty much everybody that's made one of these, they make a really big deal out of having almost that Stan Lee mentality of this might be somebody's first one. And it's more true with a big budget film than it ever was with singular comic book. And so when people go to these things and they want to be able to watch it just because, well, maybe I love Captain America and I don't give a crap about anybody else, so I'm only going to go to movies that have Captain America in them. Well, then I feel like if it's not a TV show, and they are movies, because you're presenting them as movies, you really should kind of be able to do that. So I'm of two minds about it. I find it so difficult, Steve, to even begin to discuss these things just as singular pieces. And so when people will criticize them for, well, they didn't take these characters far enough, and you're like, well, it was kind of a pilot for a TV show that you get every couple of years, and it's $300 million an episode. I don't know how to criticize that. I don't know that it's bad that a lot of the thematic stuff and character stuff that I latched onto when I reviewed Avengers in the rewind format, I came upon because of stuff I saw later. If I'd done that movie a couple months, I'm glad that I wait as long as I do. If I'd done that a couple months after that, I don't think I would have had anything like as much to analyze. Is that bad?
It's sort of unprecedented is the only problem. Like, we talk about all these things critically, and we tried to do our best to keep it to the film in itself, but it's really hard when it asks you not to, and it's really hard when certain people do. Like, you're just a casual moviegoer. These movies break billions of dollars, so clearly there are people that are watching this that didn't watch the other films, that are only there for the Avengers. And for them, the movie has to function on a certain level, but the film is also saying that it's not for you as much as it's for these other people. And you get these things like conversations about who's worthy for Thor's hammer, and you mentally do the open work idea of you fill in the blank. It doesn't have to say Avengers Assemble because we as the fans know that's what's coming next. And it's just as much about the people that keep up with this as it is about the people that don't. but it seems to be really skewed in the favor of the people for the continuity. And so it's definitely a bit of a double-edged sword. You can't just be a person that doesn't keep up with this continuity to go into a film and expect to get it. And you can't necessarily even expect to have like the most critical of conversations about them, because there's so much here that's built on things that's happened before. And you wonder if this was like Planet of the Apes 11, would we be saying the same thing? If all these movies just said Marvel 1, Marvel 2, Marvel 3, Marvel 4, like if this was Marvel 11, Age of Ultron or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I think I think as far as a film franchise, and specifically a comic book film franchise, I have mentioned this various times before. What they are doing is, it's the first time I've seen this done, even with any kind of tightly wound comic book series in film, is that they really are literally trying to bring the comic book experience to a mainstream movie-going platform. And at this point, they have succeeded. And what you and I are talking about is pretty much the same kind of conversation what you and I would talk about for comic books. A lot of people will jump into various storylines and go, well, geez, I don't know what's going on here. What comic books do I have to go back and read? I, as a longtime reader, I have even as an early age, I always understood something came before. If I'm a little confused, I'll keep reading, or maybe go back and I'll figure it out on the way. And that's what I think fans need to do with the films, but particularly film goers who don't read the comics and just simply watch the films and enjoy them, because they have their own fan base. There are plenty of people who just watch the films. And they're having – it's interesting watching this new group of fans experience the things that you and I take for granted as longtime comic book fans. They're seeing this kind of continuity build on top of each other. They're where they can go back and look and see what they've missed and see what connects. They can experience characters that die and come back, and that's kind of, I don't know if that was like a good move or not. And characters that they feel like might be used in other certain ways. I mean, it's really amazing. And so far, so good. So far, it's been successful. I mean, we're 11 movies into this, and they've been able to keep it up. And I feel like it's actually gotten more sophisticated as it's gone.
See, I've been talking about that a lot, and as you were talking, I thought of something I never thought of before, which is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. a lot of the time, by and large, is like event tie-ins.
It is. It is like event tie-ins.
Yes, that's
interestingly.
Totally
Not to sit here and just dog on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm just saying that in the comic book equivalent, that is the comic book equivalent of the event. The other nice thing is that while Manos and I have talked about this 1,000 times, growing up, we would just read an issue. We'd just be like, I'm gonna read Guardians of the Galaxy number 8 or whatever, and it doesn't matter what came before it. You're just enjoying the issue for what it is. The nice thing though with movies is that the first Avengers DVD or Blu-ray will never be worth $500,000.
That's
you
true.
can always get back to it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Or you don't have to buy a trade of it for $30, $50.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to worry about reprints. Or anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, I was just saying. Interestingly, we talked a little bit about Whedon not doing more movies, and there's lots of stuff that we'd want to do in this that didn't happen, and there's a lot of coverage about the disputes that we did Marvel had, and I think it's important to note that it's not all Marvel's fault. Clearly, the farm seat is that's ridiculous. It's out of line to want to cut that, but to want to have the Infinity War and Thor Ragnarok setup is not a bad thing, and I say that because Whedon's a writer that hates foreshadowing. He never wanted Buffy season 1 to set up Buffy season 7. He hates that kind of style. He just doesn't do it. He does it every now and then. He did the Dream thing at the end of season 5, but that's only because he realized he got another network. He hates foreshadowing. So he has to work under the constraints of, he wants this to be a movie that's enjoyable on its own merits, but it's not supposed to be that from the inception. So he was a good choice, and in the sense that he's able to juggle all of this the best out of any writer I've ever seen, but he's also the bad guy to lead a universe, because he's just, unless he's writing and directing every single film, he's never going to be able to set up and address everything that you need to happen per film on his own. Because he doesn't like writing that way. He doesn't want to do Infinity Stones because he's not doing Infinity War. And this isn't Infinity War yet, but Marvel needs that to happen.
Yeah.
Oh my God, can we please get a literary debate between him and Grant Morrison?
Yes. Yes. Oh God, I didn't want that to happen.
Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference between foreshadowing and advertising for the next set of movies that are going to be coming up, right? Like, I think foreshadowing is, in the first Avengers movie, Tony Stark and Captain America having vastly different worldviews about the way that they think the Avengers should operate and the way that technology should be used in the world that exists in the Avengers, and that foreshadows a disagreement that becomes a civil war in Captain America Civil War, rather than Thor having a detour in the middle of this movie that sets up Thor Ragnarok. I think that's a vastly different kind of thing.
I don't completely agree, though, just because, I mean, the Thor thing is not Iron Man 2. It's not that like the whole movie is wait till Avengers comes out, wait till Avengers comes out. It's literally about 2 minutes of the film that makes us understand that Infinity Stones exist, and it's not convenient that 4 of them have showed up in the past 3 or 4 films. And I mean, if it was any longer than that, I would completely agree with you. But it is literally just there for about 2 minutes of screen time.
But I think foreshadowing is a little bit more in the vein of, at least how I've heard discussions about it in literary classes that I've taken. It's a little bit more character and thematically focused, whereas I would think the Thor thing was a little bit more, look, we have Infinity Stones, we're going to use them in this movie, come to the next movie, guys. Stay for the post-credit sequence because we're going to have something about Infinity Stones in the post-credit sequence.
Yeah, I think we're quibbling over semantics a little bit, but what you're talking about, Dan, is intent. And I think you're right, where it's like, are we really trying to, like, cleverly set up a thing, or are we trying to get viewers excited to make sure they come back for the next one? I think there's a definite distinction there. You know what I mean? Like,
maybe that's what I was trying to say, and I was not articulating it properly. But yeah, I agree with what you just said.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I just feel like the word foreshadowing, I think, kind of means both of those things. I mean, it's anything that sets up something else that you get to later. In fact, I think a lot of the time things that we might look at as foreshadowing are either accidental or we built on something, where it's like it was there and it made sense in the moment, and then we later on went in another movie went back to it and built on it. Well, that's not foreshadowing because it didn't know it was going to happen. You know what I mean?
Right, and I think the best foreshadowing is unintentional, potentially, because you know your characters well enough that, you know, they're going to make certain choices in the future that you wouldn't perceive because they're so well defined, and, you know, they're put in different situations where the viewers would be able to predict, if you put them in this situation, they would do this thing.
And to speak to your point, the first Iron Man movie is Tony staring at his name on a missile that blows up and makes him Iron Man. And that's exactly what happens with Quicksilver and Ultron and everything going forward in this movie.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the whole thing as a piece, as a literary piece, it doesn't matter what the thought process was. When you're looking at it in terms of literary analysis, you would call those things foreshadowing. I mean, literarily, a lot of the time, foreshadowing is about symbols. You know, where you have like a thing that you see that you don't understand the significance of it until another thing happens, and then when you rewatch it, you're like, oh, that shoe was there because this person is walking all over this other person later, or whatever it is. To be shiny shoes, mother of God. Anyway, so yeah.
Maybe it's just coming from the fact that I'm such a big Thor fan, and I wanted Thor to have some sort of other significant thing to do in the movie other than his hammer be a cool part of the movie.
That's fair.
And just because his movies have been the most lackluster of the solo movies of any of the characters that have gotten them.
Yeah.
But I have to say, as a Hulk and Hawkeye fan, I was very pleased to get those two characters to have so much to do in the movie. But
you know how in my Avengers rewind I said that Avengers was like Hawkeye 0.3? I think this is Hawkeye 1. I think we finally got Hawkeye 1. Yay! Let's talk about some continuity stuff now, since we're sort of there. One question I had with the Infinity Stones, and I can't remember exactly what happens in the Dark World after credit scene. I know that it sets up Guardians, but I only saw that once or twice.
What happens is they bring the ether to the Collector. Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. So here's my question: does it make any sense at all for Thor to deliver the expository dialogue that clearly is just for the audience to set up the next movies of 4 of these things have shown up in the last few years? You weren't there for Guardians of the Galaxy. How do you know about that one? Because I'm
That
pretty
was in
sure
the
the
Vision though. The Vision told him about the purple gem as well as the
oh,
ether as well as the tesseract,
did
and
it?
yeah, that was all
But
there.
did it tell him where it was?
It didn't tell him
Because he
where it
said
was. The Vision was he saw all of the gems that were active in the situation right now, and he had like a flash to Guardians in there.
oh, okay. Well, then that's fine. I guess I didn't quite realize. I remember seeing the 4 of them, but I just wasn't sure why Thor knew that,
Yeah,
like,
there's like a
that, like,
sequence
many
there where
had
like
shown.
it goes to each one of them individually to see where they were first.
The other thing I want to talk about is Iron Man 3, and I haven't seen it in a while, and it's one of the films so far that I know the least well. I also suspect that after watching this and thinking a lot more about Avengers, that I'm going to have a very different read on that movie next time I see it, because I've been pretty kind of it's okay on that movie for a long time, kind of indifferent toward it. And then I just kept thinking about it while I was reviewing Avengers, so I really want to watch it again. But
I think
he
the movie
destroys
is. I think the movie gets better the more you watch it. Frankly.
Yeah.
he destroys his suits at the end of that movie. Why does he have all these suits now?
The suits at the end of that movie were all about protecting himself from every inevitability. All of them were just specialized prototypes that did one thing or another because he wanted to account for every possible situation ever, and it was all about the insecurity that you need to prevent every single possible threat there could ever be. And when he blows all those up, it's him accepting that that's not there. And in this movie, when he has the Iron Legion, it's all about just making sure people are protected when he deals with situations. It's not about him wanting to hide in that shell. It's about he's doing his job. He needs someone to do damage control, essentially. And
Which I say should be a TV show.
yes, it should be totally be a TV show. And importantly, he also says when he's talking to Dr. Cho that when she says that your suits will be obsolete, he says he's counting on it. It's not the suits are just a means to an end right now. So the first time I watched it, I thought this was really counter to Iron Man 3, but no, I think it does actually gel with that because it's not about insecurity anymore. It's just a relapse to wanting to protect the people you care about.
I've heard some people also complain. That makes a lot of sense, Steve. Now, I still think that I don't know what it would have been, but that maybe there should have been something that tied those together because it was a thing that I was a little bit confused about, and I know a lot of other people were. There's a thing that a lot of people have been kind of perplexed by. That is, you get that line at the end of Avengers where Nick Fury says they'll come back because we'll need them to, and it kind of implies that they're all going their separate ways until another giant threat happens. But you get to this, and we've already got Avengers Tower, and it seems like they're sort of together already. And is that a thing that bothered you guys? Is that a problem? What do you think?
I think Nick was just wrong. I think.
Wait, same thing about Jim Gordon at the end of Dark Knight, though, where it's like yeah, he'll run because we can take it because he can take it.
Well,
No,
he was
actually,
wrong,
he's just
too.
gonna go
He couldn't
back to
take
his
it.
house.
I mean,
I
I
think it
assumed from the
only-
beginning that it was just
just
they
crap
kept
that
going
these
together
two
to
guys
find
said.
Loki's scepter. But I don't know. Maybe that is an issue now that I'm thinking about it.
Well, it's just they've already got the tower built, and they look like they just kind of look like they're operating. But then this does seem like maybe it is the first mission they've done in a while. So I don't know if it's a problem. I'm just asking questions.
I think the only sort of in continuity problem that it has is when you think about Thor: The Dark World, where it's such an existential threat to the Earth. Um, why wouldn't the Avengers show up and try to help Thor with that? Like, there's no. Because it's so Earth centric, you know what I mean? Like, if we do Thor Ragnarok and it's all about, like, Thor preventing the end of all existence by traveling through space time and it's all involved with Asgard and stuff, I can see why the Avengers would be like, okay, we'll let Thor deal with that because it's so his wheelhouse, I guess. But, if the Avengers are an existing entity, I don't know why they didn't help him with the events of Thor: The Dark World. I can see
like just a
why.
comic book thing though. Like in Thor and Captain America and Iron Man deal with that all the time in their own books. They never call the other Avengers unless it's an Avengers
I
book.
mean,
That is a typical complaint I've heard of comic books in general.
Yeah, I mean, like there's tons of
where
stuff
were
I've been
the-
reading right.
but
Where
just
were the
because it's a problem in the
Avengers
comics doesn't mean that it's not a problem here.
It also doesn't mean that it has to be as much of a problem here. I'm with Dan because we don't get as many of them. When you're publishing monthly comics and you have teams, but you also have solo acts, it's really hard not to deal with that. But when you're only putting 2 or 3 out a year, it seems like a thing that you should kind of be able to not have to sweep under the rug.
I don't know. It's just one of those things. Just growing up, it's like I've learned to accept it. Like, hey, where were the Avengers when Galactus attacked? I don't know. They were doing something. So
Yeah.
that's just kind of something I've kind of rolled with the punches on. I brought that to these films.
I mean,
I
I'm with
agree with
I
you.
roll
It's the same
punches.
mentality of just like these are people that randomly put on costumes and fight crime. They don't. It's a comic book universe. I can kind of deal with that in that sense. And I mean, a lot of times when we get stuff like Iron Man 3 or Winter Soldier or Thor, when they get to that final ending battle thing, it's usually done really quickly without any warning. So I wouldn't know how they can't attack the Avengers in the first place. Like Cap had no resources. Thor, I don't think had any resources before they got there. Iron Man was completely in the dark before he got to the end of that film. So I don't think he would even be able to call the Avengers if he wanted to.
Well, it's at least not like the most recent Justice League direct animated video movie where they spend half the movie not even knowing how to contact each other.
Yes.
There's like we didn't even give each other phone numbers. He's not answering my tweets. Why do you have to tweet him? That's ridiculous.
And to be clear, I'm not saying that I haven't rolled with that sort of thing in the comics before. I'm just trying to get into the mind of the person who's a general viewer of these movies, who goes into a Thor movie where there's this giant existential threat where Captain America and Iron Man might be of some help, and Thor conveniently doesn't call them for whatever reason, and they've never read a comic book before. That might be something that they're thinking when they're watching the movie. I'm just saying.
Well, the other thing is we've had a few movies now, of course, obviously between these two, and you get the sense that they did go their separate ways and they are doing their own thing. And then you get to this, and it's like the Avengers are this established thing, and they go hang out at their headquarters and they have cocktails. And like, did we really need the entire team to go get that scepter just because the scepter was involved in the last big thing they all did together? Like, is it them cleaning house because they think it's their responsibility, or is it because this movie has all these characters in it? Again, I'm just asking questions.
I would say probably both. It is their movie. It's called The Avengers. And it is probably them feeling like, because they were talking about how this seemed to be finally getting the scepter. I guess they wanted to make sure if they went all together, they could make sure they would be able to do it easier.
We should get into... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve.
No, sorry, I was just going to agree with Manos, really.
Oh, okay, Steve agrees with Manos.
Yes,
check.
I agree with him agreeing with me.
Okay, I agree with you agreeing with me. That I agree with you.
Oh my God. Okay, we're gonna go to commercial. No. I guess we should tackle just some other questions folks have had. I agree with folks when they say that it's kind of surprising that Hydra was as small of an entity, had as small of a presence in this as they did, because the setup at the end of Winter Soldier really feels like it really makes you feel like List and Strucker are going to be a big deal, and they're kind of just there to tie everything together and give us the twins. And then the counter argument to that, of course, is, well, I'm saying that I would have liked more screen time from Ultron. So how would I have gotten that if I had gotten more of that? So I'm not sure that we're not just trying to throw too much in one movie at the end of the day, and maybe it's just not a problem that can really be solved, but it's a thing that surprised me, but ultimately I didn't care.
Yeah. I mean, I wish Baron von Strucker survived this movie, because he's an interesting character in the comics, and I think if you were to use him in a future Captain America movie that wasn't Civil War, he could have been explored, and you could have done more stuff with him. I mean, granted, they cast Baron Zemo in Civil War, and I like Baron Zemo a whole lot more than Baron von Strucker, so that's real cool.
Got the better Baron!
That's true.
Yeah, I do like Baron.
He's being played by a great actor there, too, so that's exciting.
Who's playing Zemo? I forgot.
Look up his name real quick, because I don't remember off the top of my head.
While you look, I'll voice my opinion on that. I actually was not surprised that Hydra was not a major player in the story, other than to be the tie-in and the flow through to the Ultron story. That's actually what I expected. I would have been surprised if they were a major player in the story throughout the entire film.
Yeah.
Because that would have been too much. One of them would have to be subservient to the other, like some other superhero films that are a little weaker when they try to throw everything out there.
The answer is Daniel Brawl.
Okay, I'm not familiar with the name.
He's in some spy movies here and there. He was in Inglourious, the Quentin Tarantino movie. He was in Bourne Ultimatum. He was in a movie that just came out a couple years ago called Rush, and he was really good in that.
Did he play the crazy Nazi killer guy from Inglourious?
Yes.
Oh,
Frederick Zoller.
That guy's great.
Yeah,
okay.
He's fantastic. He's perfect for that role.
Sold. I like that. That's great. But yeah, that would be my opinion with that. I'm happy they played it out the way they did. I was a little surprised Baron von Strucker I got killed so early. He does have actually one of my favorite lines in the film, where he makes that impassioned speech, but never surrender, never surrender. We are going to surrender.
That was really funny.
I laughed very hard at that.
There's surprisingly some decent dark comedy in this too, as kind of fun and silly as it can get. That thing when Ultron cuts that guy's arm off is hilarious. when he's like, no, it'll be okay. I'm sure it'll be fine.
That's the origin of Ulysses Claw you're talking about.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's gonna be in Black Panther. It's gonna be awesome.
People knowing everything. Oh yeah, Wakanda. Yeah. Getting name dropped and setting that up. That's pretty cool.
It's cool that Andy Serkis is going to get to be the main villain of a Black Panther movie.
And he won't be CGI. He'll just actually be acting.
Well, so it'll be his first appearance in anything. Everybody's expecting the CGI character, and then they get Andy Serkis, and they're like, what? Okay, what other things do we need to tackle? Because I feel like there's all... I am surprised by how excited I am about the up-and-coming team of Avengers. I was afraid that I was going to feel like it was kind of B-listy, and I'm stoked about it. First of all, I love Falcon so much.
Me too.
I don't know, I'm just in love with this character. I'm not upset that he wasn't in more of this movie, because... Okay, you got a guy with just a bow and arrow. What in the world is Falcon gonna do?
War Machine barely did anything, so yeah.
I mean, that is a thing with moving forward, is that he does have Hawkeye's role of weakest Avenger that doesn't. I mean, when he went up against the Helicarrier in Winter Soldier, he got one of his wings shot off really fast. I'm going down.
No, Winter Soldier rips it off himself.
Oh, that's what it was. Well, anyway, whatever it was. Yeah, well, look, I haven't seen the movie 25 times like some people.
It's 225. Get it right.
No, that's right. I knew that. When he gets his wing ripped off, it's like, yeah, I don't know how long you thought you were going to be able to fly in that much firefight, that much of a firefight. But I don't know, man. I'm really excited about it, and I went into this movie somehow or rather having not heard that War Machine was going to be in it, and I remember, for some reason, the night before I went, I remember thinking, it would make a lot of sense for War Machine to show up in this movie. And then I went, there it was, and I was like, yeah, War Machine's in this movie. And then he actually put a suit on at the end, and I was like, oh my god, that's great. I just wish that we somehow or rather could have, for some reason, shoehorned in, once again, the joke about him and his password. Because I love that joke.
There's a really funny line from Joss Whedon in that Empire podcast that I was talking about before, where he was talking about that scene where, Chris Evans almost says Avengers Assemble and we see the new team and everything. And he said that he wanted to include Spider-Man and Captain Marvel in that scene. And he wasn't allowed to do it when they finished filming the film, and then Marvel talked to him. They're like, yeah, we just got the rights to do Captain Marvel and Spider-Man. He's like, I have just locked my film, you mother bleepers.
So they totally would have let him do it.
Yeah.
Ah!
There was supposed to be a really big entrance for Captain Marvel in the script where she flies into the facility and lands in front of the team with her awesome costume and everything, and they had to cut that, and they just made it the showing off of Scarlet Witch's new costume.
Well, one thing I will say for not including them is everybody that's there was was set up and
Yeah.
mattered and was important to the story. Like suddenly having a couple other people that would fly in, it would be the first time we ever saw them. They would completely overpower that scene. Because I know I was just really stoked. Where I'm like, oh cool, like we're gonna get Falcon on a team, and like you expect Vision will be there, but just to get to see that and imagine, oh cool, him as like a regular Avenger, and I don't know, like that whole thing was exciting. We spent time with these people. I wouldn't have wanted that overshadowed by people that weren't there before.
I 100% agree. I think what happened should have happened. It would have been super cool to see Captain Marvel and Spider-Man just show in and go, hey, hope you're enjoying the movie. But that would have been a great line.
Oh my god, that would have been great. Where the Porky Pig moment was like, that's all, folks. But it's also cool
it would have not been a good thing.
It's also cool because it's exactly 6.
Yeah, and you know what? There's no saying that these characters can't eventually be folded into the Avengers in the next few films. So I mean,
almost certainly they will be. I still think Spider-Man is probably. I don't think it's that it's a rumor that the Spider-Man movie is going to be Spider-Man learning to be an Avenger. I think that's going to happen.
There's no way that's not going to happen. Him.
Dan's sad.
Yeah,
Dan's going to cry. I can just.
Yeah, and Carol Danvers has been an Avenger. Yeah. And Carol Danvers has been an Avenger for quite a while, and she's become.
Oh yeah, she's a mainstay member of the team.
Yeah, and the last few years she's become very important. So yeah, I mean, guaranteed. I guess they're going to introduce her to her first film. Although I keep hoping they'll introduce the character first. Maybe as a side character or something like that to just to show that she exists. And then we'll have the origin story.
Well, considering the entire Avenger team is in Civil War, I wouldn't be surprised if one of the government officials we run into in that movie is Carol Danvers.
She should show up in Civil War and be like, I'm not going to register. And everybody's like, who are you?
Well, yeah, she eventually... Yeah, she was she was in the Captain Marvel comic for a few issues before she gained her powers. And actually, after that, she didn't appear for a while as Miss Marvel. So that would definitely be indicative of how she was introduced in the comics. Because she was I think she was a colonel?
She was a major, I think.
She was a major or something like that?
Yeah, because there's a joke in one of her first appearances that they echo in Earth's Mightiest Heroes where Hawkeye or someone's like, look, she outranks you, Cap.
Yeah, she does. She does outrank Cap, ironically.
That's awesome.
So it would be cool because she was first time she was introduced, she was actually in charge of a military base, which is super progressive considering it's the 60s. But now, of course, now it wouldn't, of course, be too unusual. So yeah, I mean that would be. I hope that's the way she's introduced, but who knows?
So, 80 minutes in, and I haven't started talking about whether or not the title makes any sense, which is really unusual for me. So I should start talking about this. So we should start talking about that. Age of Ultron. It's called Age of Ultron, but it takes place over a few days. Some people have been really annoyed about that. I was at first, not annoyed, but just, yeah, okay, but it doesn't last very long. And then I thought about it after my second viewing, and I think I like it now. I think I'm fine with it now, because Ultron has this great line where he says, he echoes back to something Tony Stark said earlier, and instead of peace in our time, he says peace in my time. And the Age of Ultron is what he's trying to create, and so the title is not about a period of time. It's about it's a description of the threat that the Avengers are trying to prevent. I think it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so too.
To kind of piggyback off that, I wanted to ask Dan a question because you mentioned the line, and I think Dan might like this. They mentioned peace in our time, the Chamberlain line before the onslaughts with Germany. There's references to not only the Theodore Roosevelt's big stick diplomacy, but also the kind of diplomacy that Churchill had. And they do a lot of that with Ulysses Claw and with Tony Stark and Ultron and the kind of peace before the inevitable war that they're trying to achieve. I thought all that was really interesting, but I wanted to just gauge your reaction on it since you're more of the political guy.
Yeah, I thought all that stuff was really interesting. It's kind of indicative of the way that, the United States viewed foreign policy after World War II. It's just sort of like, in Tony Stark's view, do whatever is necessary in order to create peace within the foreseeable future, no matter what the end is. And that's what Tony Stark's view is. I think that's sort of what they were getting at is, are we making the right decisions in order to create some sort of peace? How far off is that? We don't really know what the answers to those questions are, but yeah, I think all that stuff was definitely there in the movie, at least with Tony's character. And that's one of the things I wanted to ask you guys about, because I've heard some people talk about this as a potential negative, and I didn't really see this myself, but I've heard this criticism lobbed at the film, so I wanted to get you guys sort of talking about it. Did you guys feel like this was sort of the X-Men Wolverine syndrome kind of thing, where we're just focusing on Tony Stark exclusively out of all the characters? A lot of people are saying, oh, I'm sick of these Avengers movies and the Marvel movies solely focusing on Tony Stark as the central sort of catalyst for every sort of event that happens in the Marvel Universe. I didn't necessarily get that feeling myself, but I wanted to get you guys' reaction to that sort of notion, because I've heard that criticism lobbed at it before.
I think there's weight to it, because if you look at again just the screen time the characters get, Cap and Tony always get the most. They always get 30 to 40 minutes apiece, and everyone else just gets a fraction of that. And I can see that being potentially annoying. But part of why I like it, and something that's always in the comics, is that Tony Stark's always the inciting incident for when things go wrong. Tony Stark's always the guy that messes up. And even if you were just watching the movies, one of the first things Tony Stark ever says, the first thing that we ever hear him say, or one of, is Peace is having a bigger stick than the other guy. And a guy that doesn't change his view after that and is just kind of rephrasing it constantly is going to tend to be the catalyst for problems like this. And you get that great exchange between him and Steve, where Steve says that every time someone tries to end the war before it starts, innocent people die. And that's always what Tony's trying to do. It's there in Iron Man 3, it's there in Iron Man 2, it's there in part with the first Avengers, and here in the second Avengers, almost entirely. So yeah, I think it's maybe a problem, just because I wish we got some other characters as focus, but I think it's completely warranted at the same time.
I agree.
And also, I do think there is like you said, a little bit of weight into that. But I mean, you have to, face facts. These films started with Iron Man, and he is a major character. He's always been a major character of the Avengers. If I see an Avengers movie, I want to see Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, much like I would want in a Justice League movie, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. If I don't get all three, I'm going to be disappointed. And same way with the Avengers films. And I think the Avengers films so far, out of two, have done a much better job of dispersing the material than the X-Men films have. The X-Men films, after a while, became the Wolverine movies and the X-Men buddies. And
Wolverine and the X-Men, quite literally.
That's right. So
they even called the video game that after a while.
Yeah, and there was an animated series called that in a comic book.
Yeah.
I mean, it was eventually the X-Men franchise just giving up and going, okay, we know you like this guy the most, let's just do it. And I don't feel like the Avengers films have done that yet. I think it's been fairly evenly matched. The thing I think is interesting, guys, we're talking about the political ramifications of it is, and I imagine we'll probably be seeing this in the next Captain America movie with Civil War, is that it does seem like Captain America and Tony Stark, Steve Rogers and Tony Stark, are these two kind of sides to America and how they relate to the rest of the world, where Tony represents sort of the military industrial complex, where Steve Rogers is, fighting for the little guy, the freedom for all, and they're both part of the same. Those two mentalities are part of the same country, and those are the two messages we throw out to the entire world. Like, hey, we're for freedom. We're going to stand up for you and the little guy. Hey, we got better guns than you. You better do what we say. That's kind of a confusing message to many people in the rest of the world. So
yeah, it's completely conflicting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's I think that's been handled very well so far in the relationship, and I'm hoping that's what we'll be seeing in Captain America.
I also think it's important to note that we kind of can see the future of this, and we know that Robert Downey is not going to play the character forever. This franchise is going to go on for a very long time, and it's probably going to go on past his being the forefront guy for everything, which will immediately make the films cheaper to make. Although it, although it may be that other people come in that also command $20 million for every movie, or however much it is that he commands now. But obviously they can afford it. But the so the thing is, like, eventually we're gonna have to play this out, and we're not gonna be able to keep milking the Captain America versus Iron Man sort of right versus left thing out forever, because we're just gonna kind of, not hit a wall, but like I think we can kind of play that out to a degree. But the other thing is, I think that people reacting that way is really interesting, because it's sort of like life imitating art or reflecting art, right? Where where people are irritated because every time every time Tony Stark shows up, he's got to be the life of the party and stand in the forefront, and wants everyone looking at him and no one else. Well, that's what he does in the films. I think that's really interesting, that the viewers are reacting to that, and if he's gonna be in a movie, that, like, if he's gonna show up in a place in his universe, that's what's going to happen. So they're reacting to what the character is.
No, I agree, especially with the X-Men comparison. Like, Wolverine's not a guy that commands the presence of a room. Like, he's the guy that stands in the background, smokes a cigar, and says a wise, cracking comment every once in a while if he feels the need to. Iron Man's the guy that wants to be the center of attention all the time, so it's natural for him to sort of crave the limelight in a way that none of the other characters really do.
And
And
then it gets into trouble, and that's where interesting things start to happen. I mean, does it make other people go in the background some? Yeah, I don't think there's any way around it, but I think you have to look at the full picture and realize that eventually they're gonna have to get more screen time, because when we have an Avengers movie that doesn't feature Iron Man, those guys are gonna get more to do.
no, and I agree. I think, and the cool thing about this movie is that the creation of Ultron is a creation of Tony Stark's, but it's also kind of a co-creation of Bruce Banner's. And those are the two movies that started this whole thing in the first place, Incredible Hulk and Iron Man. And this movie is sort of about going back to the roots and the creation of this cinematic universe in the first place. Like, the Ultron that we see in the movie is a product of Tony Stark's invention, but it wouldn't have come into reality unless Bruce Banner was present and helping Tony Stark in the first place either, right?
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting. It's also important to note, and I don't know why we didn't bring this up earlier, but that Tony is, of course, kind of, and never really owns up to it, is kind of doing the exact same thing that Nick Fury and Shield were doing in Avengers, where and with an Infinity Stone, where he takes a thing and thinks that he takes this immense power and thinks he can wield it, and it's so hypocritical, because he, along with Captain America, is freaking out on Nick Fury for not telling them that he was weaponizing this thing. But he basically does the same thing, even though he wouldn't call Ultron weaponizing. I mean, obviously it kind of is,
Right.
and he doesn't tell the Avengers about it. The people that are following him, and also, isn't it interesting that he says that Cap's in charge? But how in charge is he really? Like, when he says it, like, it seems like a fun throwaway joke, but I think there's actually something there when he says, "Oh, Cap's in charge, but I'm just the one that has the money and buys everything and builds everything." And at first I thought that was him actually kind of relinquishing control a little bit. I don't know that it is. I think that in a way he's saying, "No, I'm actually still in charge."
And I love that they do draw attention to that when they hash things out, where Steve says we were supposed to be better than Shield, and Tony takes that as a joke, because in a lot of ways he puts the team in charge under Steve's leadership, but he doesn't really trust anybody. He doesn't really trust anybody but himself, and that's because he feels like he needs to guard everyone. He says he wants to put a metal suit around the entire world. Banner says that that'd be a cold world, but Tony says he's seen colder. And
yeah, that's why the motivation. That's why I'm glad that motivation really comes from a place, from that vision that he has, because he really is doing it because these are his friends, and he doesn't want to see him get killed.
And part of why, and I agree that Ultron and Tony need more screen time together, but I think part of why some of that works is Ultron and Tony are father and son in a way, and Tony's always been distant from his dad. And the way he treats the Avengers, the way Ultron treats him, there's a very similar mirrored relationship of their distance is the same thing simultaneously that's forcing them to go further and get better, but it's also that's crippling them and making them worse. And it's interesting that Tony Stark is just as much of a disease as he is an instrument of change.
Boy, that's great. Yeah, good call. And so he creates Ultron and has daddy issues. Wow, that's interesting, and and repeats some of those same kinds of mistakes in a way. Wow, I didn't think of that.
Well,
good call.
Well, when you think that's actually, I didn't even consider that. I mean, a lot of people do that. They just don't do it with robots.
This is neither here nor there, but I wanted to make sure that I said this at some point. I think Vision is one of the best examples of naturally naming a character in one of these movies.
Yes.
Because he's just called what he is. He's just literally a Vision. He's that Vision personified. I think it's really cool that we didn't even have to make a big deal out of it. It's just that's what everybody's calling him. We say there's kind of a progression of like, we talked about a Vision, and then we see him manifest, and it's like, oh, that's your Vision, and then later on we're just calling him that. Sometimes we don't do that organically, and I thought that was really cool.
I love that it's all built on distinctions too. Like it's Ultron's vision, it's Tony's vision, it's Steve's vision, it's Thor's vision. And at the end of it, Vision says it's not that simple. It's not good and bad, life versus death. There's a symbiotic relation to that. And I mentioned earlier, and I can't help but pick up on it. But there's so much of like Friedrich Nietzsche in the way Vision talks and in the way Ultron talks. And one of the tenets of his philosophy is we as human beings have this incredibly dumb need to make everything distinct, that everything is its own opposite, and we perpetuate that, and we need that to an extent, but it's founded on a lot of errors, and Ultron doesn't see it because he's angry. Vision does, and that's why he loves it.
Can you imagine if can you imagine if Jarvis from Agent Carter came into the future and met Vision?
That would be awesome.
And it was like, oh, this is what I sort of kind of turn into. Okay, well, I'm kind of metaphorically the most immortal person ever.
Have you guys heard the story that Paul Bettany told about his playing the Vision too? I think it's really interesting. Supposedly, right before he got the call from Joss Whedon to play the Vision in this movie, he got told by a Hollywood producer that he'd never work in Hollywood again, that his career in acting was over. And he was sitting on the sidewalk, sort of like, being like, oh man, my career is over. I gotta find something else to do. And Joss Whedon called him up and was like, hey, do you want to play the Vision in the movie that's going to make the most money this summer? And he was like, yes, please.
I hope that means he sticks around, because he's going to be here. He's going to be in the next Cap film. Hopefully he gets to get more of a through line, even maybe to Thor, since he's got an Infinity Stone now.
That would be
Hi,
cool.
Paul Bentley. Would you like job security?
Would I? Do I get to dress ridiculously?
And then we'll give him his own TV show.
I would be down for a
Vision should
Vision
have
TV
his own
show.
TV.
That'd be awesome.
If it's written the way he's written here, yeah, make a Vision TV show.
A lot of these characters could get away with their own TV
I'm
shows.
curious if we're going to see whatever bonding between him and Scarlet Witch.
Yes, because I was going to
follow.
mention that.
Yeah.
Because he does save her in this movie.
Yeah. Oh, I instantly thought that when I saw it, because I'd been wondering if they were going to touch on that in this film, if they'd even have time. And I think they make that touch. So that's very good.
Oh man, I'm just afraid that we're gonna see that, and I mean, who knows? And who knows who? But like, I'm just afraid that we're gonna see that romance happen, and then I'm gonna look back and be like, oh, that makes the Spock Uhura thing even harder to look at. All right. What other things do you guys want to grab onto that we haven't talked about yet
Let's talk
before
about
we wrap it up?
dumb fun things. What?
Yes, I love dumb fun things.
Favorite action sequences. This thing had like 80 billion of them. Any particular ones that stand out to you guys?
I was really impressed with the opening action scene, the one that opened the movie. That was my favorite one, I think. Just the fact that we got everyone's powers interacting with each other in such cool and interesting ways. I really liked all of the jokes with the Hulk in that. The Hulk is my favorite Avenger, so all the jokes with him at the beginning where everyone's like, "Oh, we need this base taken out," and then they're just like, "All right, the Hulk is gonna destroy this threat instantly," was hilarious. So all of that stuff was
awesome. It would have taken 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I really liked, and the final action scene's really massive. But I did in my favorite moment there where more machines gonna try to take out a bunch of Ultron drones, and the Vision just shows up, starts phasing through them and ripping apart with his hands. I thought that was great. I thought that looked awesome.
No, I agree. It did look great.
Yeah, I really dug that opening scene too, Dan. I think action wise that's maybe my favorite too. I mean, the Hulkbuster thing was fun, but that was neat. Especially, I don't know, the money shot with all 6 of them on screen. You expect something like that, but it was pretty cool. And actually, even better than seeing them all on screen at once like that was the echo to the scene at the end of or in the big action scene of the first movie where we jump from each of them in a line. They do that again, and it's even cooler there. There's also something cool. Let me tag this on too. There's also something cool about seeing Black Widow riding a motorcycle with Cap's shield in front of her.
Wasn't that cool? It was one of the more smaller action sequences. But boy, I really like the way it zipped around with her on the bike.
It's just a neat image.
Yeah. And the way she drops out of that wind jet.
Yeah, I love the line too where she picks up the shield and she's like, "I'm always picking up after you boys." That was really funny.
And what other dumb things did you, or dumb fun things did you want to talk about, Manos?
That's actually kind of it.
Well,
I got one.
We already talked about jokes and humor, so
I was excited to hear your list of dumb fun things, and I was thinking about just making it a segment from now on in Spoilercast, right? And now it's time for Manos' dumb fun things.
Well, that could be a new show. I could have a show on Geekvolution. It's just
called Dumb Fun Things.
Manos' dumb fun things.
Dumb fun. Oh my god. Yeah, I just greenlit it. I'm working up the paperwork right now. There's going to be a contract. Go ahead, Steve.
The only other one I want to mention is when Vision takes the hammer and smashes Ultron and gives it to Thor, and he's like, it's terribly well balanced. He's like, yeah, if it's too heavy, then you don't get a good swing.
My God, that was. The theater both times I saw it, the theater erupted when Vision walks over and just nonchalantly carries the hammer. Everybody reacts to that.
Yeah. I did a few other spoiler reviews of this, and every time I say that, I always mention this theater rule of...
How many times have you reviewed this movie?
1, 2, 3, 4 times. This is the
5th. You've reviewed for every time you've seen it, and now one more. Yeah. You're a slacker, Steve. You gotta go back to the theater one more time.
But I mentioned this because I saw it somewhere else. There's always that theater rule of don't introduce a gun in the first act of the play if you don't fire it in the last act. Right. And that's exactly what happens with Thor's hammer. So when he picks it up, it really feels like a weighted moment. And part of why I like it is this movie's about mortals becoming ideals and ideals becoming godly, and that's why we look up to them. So to get Thor's hammer in Vision's hand and to have the team to come together and get kind of a godly approval that these have become more than just men and they are not the mistakes Ultron's making them out to be. I thought the culmination of all that was really great.
Well, it's also important that Iron Man is the guy that leaves at the end.
Yeah.
Well, he's not the only one too. But and of course, then like I mean, I don't want to read too much into symbols that aren't actually in the movie, but you get the like marble chiseled statue with all of them. But at the end of the day, Iron Man is the guy that caused this problem, and he's maybe the least godlike of them. At the end of the day. But you know what? This is another thing we really need to talk about. The fact that there is no talk at the end about consequences for Iron Man for creating this thing that could have killed all these people. And a lot of people are reacting to that. And of course, the obvious answer, as we keep talking about with these, because it's kind of a piece of a greater whole, we'll get that later. But the question is, why don't we see any of it right away? Why isn't there an immediate backlash? Is Iron Man, is Tony Stark driving around in that car at the end, kind of looking over his shoulder and hoping he doesn't get pulled over?
That is
Yeah,
definitely something we'll have to save for a later film, if they pick up on it. I mean, they may even not.
Well, you know that Civil War is going to have a lot to do with the repercussions of this. Because there's been a lot of talk that what Tony Stark is probably going to be doing in Civil War is saying, because of what, I feel bad for what happened here, because of what I did, we need to make people with amazing abilities, we need to hold them accountable by putting them on an index, which is kind of interesting, since Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is dealing with a similar thing right now. And the most recent episode of Shield, when or at least to date with us recording this, when Almost's character says, with Ultron, we had Tony Stark and let him do whatever he wanted to and see what happened. And I was like, oh, there's like some Civil War set up there. Okay.
And also, there's the Stark Relief Foundation in this, which is ultimately what becomes damage control. The fact that there's a huge media backlash to the Avengers in the middle of the movie. There's like protest symbols of Iron Man holding guns and like a money symbol as his helmet. So they're set up there. It never really gets an ending. But I'm okay with that as long as Civil War picks up on it. If Manos is right, if it's ignored there, then it's a bigger problem. But as of right now, it feels like I'm just watching episode 11 or 12, and 13's coming in next year, and we'll see what happens then.
Well, I think the problem people have with it is just that there's a scene at the end where he's just driving a car and nobody's after him.
Yeah, that's true.
Is the thing. So, I mean, yeah, there's stuff to pick up on later, but how is he able to just get around unfettered right now, I think is the question. And that's fair.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the general public doesn't really know who created Ultron. At this point.
How could you not? Look at the design. I mean, who else makes, big giant metal people like that?
Well, that's true, but other people have tried. The Justin Hammer. For instance. And that technology is out there. So, if the general public doesn't know, it might take them a while to put things together. I mean, there probably will be people who early on go, well, gee, I wonder who could have built Ultron. And start, digging into it. But I think not at I think a reasonable amount of time has passed where we're still in that position where I can still drive around in my new Audi, and I don't know. It didn't distract me. And plus it wasn't in the middle of Manhattan or anything. He moved the Avengers headquarters out of New York. So we'll see.
Yeah, I wasn't really too bothered by it either. I think that's something that's going to be dealt with in the next movie. I think it's very likely that Civil War is going to be Tony Stark turning himself in for the crimes that were Age of Ultron. He's going to turn himself into the government, and then the government is going to work with him and say, okay, all of the people that you work with need to register with us in order to be held accountable. And he feels bad and says, okay, I guess I'm going to comply with that because I screwed up pretty badly,
I can see that, although I would be very surprised if the Registration Act wasn't his idea. It wasn't his brainchild at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I just think the conceit of the whole thing will be him turning himself in, because that makes him a little bit more sympathetic than he was in the original Civil War, where the whole intent was, let's make Iron Man the bad guy.
Yeah. And I mean, it'll be completely consistent in that he does something, and it leads to a terrible consequence of superheroes trying to beat each other up. So... I mean, I don't mean to simplify it, but I mean, if he's the impetus, if he turns himself in, if he creates the act and it creates more disorder, it's his personality. It's consistent. If he's the bad guy, it's only because that's the kind of person he is to begin with, and it doesn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
He screws up. He tries to fix it. His attempt to fix it is another sort of screw up. And as it goes along, he keeps learning things that makes him a better person. But somehow or rather, the problems he creates get bigger.
Yeah.
I think it's important that when Vision is created, it's not Tony Stark trying again and succeeding all by himself.
Yeah.
Thor shows up and brings the Mind Stone, and if it weren't for that, he might have created Ultron again. I think that's important. I don't think he's justified by Vision.
No, and he makes sure he quotes Cap at the end when he says that we're going to do this together. That it is a team effort now. That he's not working in solitude. And the Vision is just a culmination of all the Avengers' efforts, even if they didn't all agree with it to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've been at this for almost 2 hours, and that's a long time. But there was a lot to talk about. Any final thoughts before we get going here?
I can't really think of anything. I think we covered it pretty well. I think we're all in agreement here that the movie is really great and everyone should go see it as soon as possible. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I agree. If at all possible, it's good to watch this movie a couple times because we talk about the jokes and the important dialogue. And the problem with that is because it's so dense, people laugh and you miss a huge plot point somehow in the dialogue. So it's great for repeat viewings, and it speaks to what we were talking earlier about. We only get these every 3 or 4 years, and the fact that we have to rewatch them to even get them completely the first time sort of helps mitigate that weight.
Why can't we go to a movie theater and put on a headset?
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
I don't really want that.
Good, because I would not do that.
That would make 3D movies for people obnoxious.
I don't even like 3D movies, so a helmet would be horrible.
Manos, do you have any final thought? No, you should go to the theater for like a virtual reality experience.
Oh my god!
Which,
Thank
by the
God
way, I saw this in 3D, and it's terrible in 3D.
Oh, really?
You can't even tell it's 3D.
Yeah.
At all. It's impossible.
Thank God it's not the 90s anymore, because virtual reality was just awful, and I was tired of hearing people talk about it.
But it's gonna come back. It's just gonna work now. The Oculus Rift is amazing.
Oh yes, yeah. But one of my favorite lines. I think I may have said this on this channel before, but one of my favorite lines about 3D came from Roger Ebert, actually, where he said that he was talking. I forgot what 3D film he was reviewing, but he told Gene Siskel in one episode that he has seen maybe thousands of movies over the course of 40 years. His father took him to see the first 3D film, House of Wax, and over the course of seeing all these movies, all these years, he's seen every 3D film that had been made up to that date, and he said, "I've come to one conclusion: 3D sucks." And
the most profound thing he ever said.
It's completely true.
No, I'm joking. I love Ebert. Hey, I love Roger Ebert. He's my favorite.
And so I'm not interested in that. But I don't know if I have anything else to really add to this film. I felt it was exciting. It definitely met my expectations. And it went into interesting directions for the characters that I did not expect. So yeah, good work.
Any predictions about where we're taking Hulk? Because that's the big wild card right now.
I really want there to be a solo movie, if only because the Hulk is my favorite character that Marvel owns the rights to, other than Daredevil. I would really like to see a solo movie. Whedon said that he wanted to put the Hulk looking like he was going into space, and the Marvel execs wouldn't let him, and they made him change it to going down in the water. So it doesn't look like there's a Planet Hulk movie in the cards, and supposedly there's some weird rights dispute with Universal where they're not going to be able to make
sense because they've made a solo movie before.
Yeah, it's really strange. So I don't think a Hulk movie is in the cards right now, solo wise. I don't know what they're gonna do with him, because if he's outside of the Avengers and they can't make a movie of him by himself, what do you do with him?
I
But
guess
see,
bring him back into the next Avengers, saying, "Well, I'm sorry."
Yeah, it'll be like every time we brought Worf back into a TNG movie where it's like, why aren't you on DS9 right now? Because I'm important. And
I was in the show.
Since we're not, that's a really good Michael Dorn impression. Well done.
Well, thank you.
Since we're not doing a World War or a World War. We're probably not doing a Planet Hulk movie. And they put him in the water. It'll be Hulk Sequest ESV.
Ugh.
Wait.
There is
That'd be
a more
horrifying.
substantial rumor that's been going around that no one's confirmed or denied yet. That because they can't do a solo Hulk movie, they're in the early stages of planning Phase 4, and they want to do a Guardians Hulk movie together.
That's
And you do Planet Hulk through that, and then the Avengers film after we get done with Infinity War would just be World War Hulk.
Oh, that would be amazing.
sure.
I could see that happening. That's way too down the line to even be viable, maybe right now. But I think that could potentially work.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was fighting in the gladiatorial type games at first.
Yeah.
Instead of the characters that were with him, it could be the Guardians. I'd
Yeah.
pay to see that.
I would
Why
too.
not?
That sounds awesome. Rocket
So-
and Hulk together, that could be hilarious.
And Drax.
And Drax.
Oh, Drax and Hulk. I want to see fight.
I was reading an article today. This is neither here nor there, but I think it's funny. I was reading an article today that was talking about things for the next season of Agents of Shield and Carter coming back. And in the title for the article, it said Season 3 Agents of Shield banner. And I got really excited because I thought that meant that Hulk was going to be in it, and it was just like a banner for Agents of Shield Season 3. And I was like, oh.
If we could get
I-
Ruffalo on that show, it would immediately validate it potentially.
I feel duped now. Oops.
Agents of Hulk, why not?
Agents of Hulk Agents of Smash.
Yes, except better.
Yeah, let's not make that into a live action show.
No, let's not. Let's not do reality TV style Hulk.
Oh, why not? That sounds like a great idea. Hulk the Running Man.
Keeping up with the banners.
Oh my god, that's the best idea ever.
And Smash Mouth could do the theme song.
Oh no.
Why not?
He might as well be living on Planet Hulk.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, everybody, thanks always for listening. We sure appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and bid you adieu now, and I'm sure Steve is going to go see this movie again tomorrow, and then he'll probably review it 5 more times.
I wish I could. I really am in love with this movie. So.
Well, thanks for listening. We sure appreciate it, folks. We will see you again very shortly on the channel. This was Captain Logan and the real Manos.
Hi, goodbye, folks, and I'd like to apologize to everyone watching this if we did not mention that one specific thing you really loved or hated about the film.
Steve Baxi.
Avengers.
You know, we didn't talk about that and whether or not it was irritating.
I was okay with it after like the second viewing.
Yeah, I'm still not sure what I think about it. I mean, it's not a big deal or anything. I don't feel one way or the other about it, really.
Hey, remember
Right.
that one Star Wars film where Luke Skywalker goes, "May the Force..."
I don't know. I'm not sure why we did it as a tease, where it's like, oh man, we sure want someone to finally say it. Especially because just one time, I want somebody in an Avengers thing to say "Avengers Assemble," and then they're all standing there going, "We're right here."
I do really want to see Avengers Assemble on screen, but Whedon mentioned that the part of the reason that he didn't want that is they never even filmed him saying "Assemble." The script ends with Avengers A stop, and that's kind of like. It's sort of his ultimate symbol for everything he couldn't get into the film. This is the one thing that he wanted to make sure he got in there. And he talked about it that it's kind of the Umberto Eco idea of you don't need us to say the line because part of what this is the geeky experience. So you fill it in your head, and that's always going to be more exciting than Chris Evans just yelling it out for you. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I think it's a good enough justification.
Well, because part of it, okay, so this is dumb because we were like leaving, but so you know there have to still be people who aren't even expecting that and don't even know about it. And I know the first movie was called Avengers Assemble overseas, but like I don't know. I guess that's kind of cool for fans and stuff, but then it's the last thing you're left with in the movie. And it's not like we're doing that with everything. I mean, we've got little Easter eggs to things. We got. I want to say this is the first time anybody's ever called Iron Man Shellhead.
I think so. Yeah.
In these. And we also got Puny Banner. I mean, like, so there's already some of that going on. But I don't know. It's cute. Whatever. And Dan Torrey.
Hulk and Thor are my favorite Avengers.
Thanks, Dan. So we leave you with those thoughts, and feel free to leave yours in the comments. Thanks for listening. We sure appreciate it, and we'll see you again shortly on Geekvolution.